Hey there and welcome back. In this video we are going to talk about motivation and something that I find particularly interesting, which is the negative effects of rewards on motivation. But before we dive in, do you know what day is today? Today is the third Monday of January, which means is Blue Monday, the day we pretend depression comes on a schedule and only lasts one day. Yay, mental health! Today is the third Monday of January, which means it's Blue Monday, a day as fake as you can possibly. Today is the third Monday of January, which means it's Blue Monday. I can't fake this anymore, so let's just start. Blue Monday has a reputation for being the most depressing day of the year. But how did it come about? The concept was first defined by Cliff Arnold, who claimed to have calculated the most depressing day of the year using a mathematical equation. This equation was first published in a press release by a traveling agency from UK called Sky Travel. This was all part of a much larger marketing campaign aimed at selling more vacations in January, when the number of holidays people book is quite low. So, this agency declared that the first ever Blue Monday would take place on the 24th of January of 2005. Following this, other companies also hopped on that Blue Monday marketing campaign train. Scientists refer to the equation as being nonsensical and pseudoscience, while a lot of mental health professionals accuse the concept of downplaying the seriousness of mental health issues such as depression. It caused quite a bit of stir because it's simply not true. Even Cliff Arnold came out and said that there is no science behind this equation, but it was just his way to inspire people to take action and make bold life decisions. Whatever that is. But nevertheless, I was really curious to see this equation and understand why it fooled so many people. So here it is. So we have capital W from weather, capital D from monthly salary, from which you deduct your debt, everything multiplied by T times since Christmas and Q times since failing your New Year's resolutions, everything divided by M, which is low motivational levels, and Sodium would really be pleased to see this, Na, the feeling of a need to take action. It is interesting to note that three of these values have to do in one way or another with the level of motivation. Time since we failed our New Year's resolutions have to do with the fact that we lack the motivation to continue with our plans for the year. Also, low motivational levels and the need to take an action also has to do a lot with motivation. And I think this is it. That's why a lot of people were fooled by this equation, because we associate a bad day with a lack of motivation. So it was interesting to see what the world of psychology has to say about this. And here, motivation is defined as an internal state that activates behavior. Psychologists separate between two main categories: primary motives and secondary motives. Primary motives are physiological needs. These are eating, drinking, sex, waste elimination, pain avoidance, and oxygen. Secondary motives, however, come from personal incentives. Example of this can be personal interest, competition, or goals like those New Year resolutions we always make. Now, another important distinction has to be made between internal motivating forces, so intrinsic motivation, and external motivating forces, extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is when we do an activity just because we enjoy it. Extrinsic motivation, on the other hand, it's a reward-driven behavior, which means you do something to get something. And that reward can be fame, can be money, can be an award in itself, can even be a good grade. But what I find most interesting is the strong correlation between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Now let's check out 3 experiments that show this in a really powerful way. In an experiment conducted in 1976, Students were given mathematical games and were monitored by psychologists for 2 weeks to see how much time they spent playing these games. In the third week, the students were divided into groups. The first group was to receive rewards every time they would play the game, while the second group will not receive anything. As you might expect it, the first group played considerably more games than the second group. But the interesting part is what happened weeks later, after the rewards were discontinued. Well, the first group who received rewards barely touched any of the games, while the second group who never received the reward, they were still regularly playing the mathematical games. So I guess the moral of the story is, if your parents ever gave you any kind of reward to do your math homework and now you hate math, well, you know why. Mom? This experiment was done multiple times since, with students of different ages and with different subjects, but the results were always similar. So as we can see here, extrinsic motivation can undermine intrinsic motivation, especially in the long run. So rewards can literally take the fun out of activities we would otherwise find quite enjoyable. Experiment 2 is the candle problem, which is all about creative problem solving. Here is how it's presented. You are given a candle, a book of matches, and a box of tacks. Your task is to attach the candle to the wall, so when you lit the candle, the wax will not drip on the table. If you have not done this before, pause the video here and try to come up with a solution yourself. Ready? Here's the solution. As you can see, the solution involves quite a bit of creativity by using the box the tacks were put in as a holder for the candle. But what happens when you involve rewards? Well, in an experiment, participants were divided into groups. Group 1 will not receive any rewards. Group 2 will receive rewards, but only depending on how fast they find a solution. So they would receive $5 if they would be among the fastest 25%, and would receive $20 if they were the fastest person to find a solution. Group 1 took anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes to come up with a solution. Group 2, on average, took about 3.5 minutes longer than Group 1 to come up with a solution. Those that receive incentives to find a solution faster failed to do so. So if you have a creative task at hand, pairing it up with a reward might not be such a good idea. Have you ever wondered why there is no compensation for blood donations? This experiment will touch on that. A bit over 150 women interested in donating blood were divided in 3 groups. The first group was not to receive any compensation for their blood donation. The second group would receive a compensation of $7. The third group would also receive the compensation of $7, but were given the opportunity to immediately donate the money to a charity. The results: Group 1, 52% of the women donated blood. Group 2, 30% of the women donated blood. Group 3, much like Group 1, 53% of the women donated blood. Extrinsic motivation, so those $7, considerably decreased the amount of blood donations. And that's because it hinders the intrinsic motivation. If we were to receive money for our blood donations, most of us would probably not do it. But it's important to note that rewards are not all bad. Just look at Group 3. Since the women were given the opportunity to donate the money to a charity, they felt like their intrinsic motivation is not hindered by this. In the end, they will give the rewards away and they will just be left with their altruism. Extrinsic motivation takes the fun out of enjoyable activities. It's the silent killer of creativity and the enemy of altruism. But rewards are not all bad. They can even help us achieve better when it comes to repetitive tasks that don't require creative thinking. And we all do those. Rewards are just not the optimal solution when they hinder intrinsic motivation. So if you're looking to do something just because it makes you happy from the inside, don't add rewards to that mix. That's it. I hope you found this video useful, and let me know your thoughts and your questions in the comments below. Until next time.